Good morning, everyone. Guyamora, Molo, Sabonani. How is everyone doing? Good. Comrades, we are opening for day 2 of the tribunal. Can I please ask, it's Mary or Mrs. H to come and light the candle so that we can continue to commemorate our comrades that are not with us here.
Good morning, everybody. Can we just stand and close our eyes for a prayer? Dear God, as we reflect on today's gospel, we remember the humility of obedience of Jesus. Help us to trust in your wisdom and provision, even when we face challenges and struggles. Guide us to live with humility, respecting others, and fulfilling our responsibilities with grace. Strengthen our faith in your divine plan and lead us to walk in your love each day. Amen.
All right. So yes, we're going to use this first half an hour to wrap up some of these discussions that we had yesterday about the implementation of the small-scale fishery policy and the first case that the jury heard. I want to check from the jury side if there is any reflections or any sort of questions that you have also based on what you have heard yesterday, and that can be maybe kick off some interventions from the floor as well. You covered, okay. So let's hear from the floor. Anyone wants to share some points or reflections from yesterday? We're gonna have microphones going around. Jordan, will you? Can I see the hands? Okay, Randall, and then my friend from Lukov.
Good morning once again. Yesterday we were asked by the jury about, like, can we prove to the rest of the world? If the government knew what we meant when we said we want preference to access, if everyone actually knew what us fishers are saying when we're saying preference to access, we want preference to access, then things would be much better, I think. Because right now, the big companies have preference to access. The rich people have preference to access. When we're saying we want preference to access, we're not saying we just want to go and fish. We also want to get onto the commercial scene. We also want to have our permits issued on time. Even this squid season, we were whole 5 days we had to wait for our permits. But the commercial companies got theirs on time. I know, because our cooperative was the first cooperative to receive commercial the permits this year or this season. Because I was making such a noise, they tried to get my mouth shut, and they gave there, give some form for his permits, let him shut up. But if we had preference to access, things would be better. We could prove to the world. If we had viable baskets, we could prove to the world. If we had just a little bit more training, if they took a little bit more time when they started off the cooperatives and stuff, we could prove to the world. And I believe now that if we do get preference to access, we can prove to the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Randall.
My name is Jacobus van Weekner. I am from Lukov in the Free State. The jury asked yesterday that they want some proof. No, I'm not going to be apologetic. The real reason is why we are here. That is the proof we are here. That is the proof that we talk about our struggles. That is fine there. We want to be respected. We want to own the land. We want to get access to the land. And when they wrote the policy, we must do it together. They can't do things for us. We must do it together. It is our democratic right. And I want the jury, wherever you are, in the United States or wherever you are, you must put us first on your agenda to put pressure on the South African government, to whoever they are, to recognize us and to respect our rights and our humanity, because it is been stolen from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Neville, I see your question, but can I get some more of the fishers first? Clarence, and then I see Walter, and then next to Walter, sorry, I cannot see who is there.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Walter Steenkamp. I'm from the Northern Cape, Port Nolloth. I was part with the policy, the time the policy was created, from the beginning until the end. Yeah, we have a vision that time, then we writing the policy. There was a vision that we as community was having. And that vision was to make a better life and a sustainable life for us. And that not just for us, but for the future. And leave everything of the things that we leave behind when we pass away, that the generation can carry on with our legacy that we leave behind as fishers. So the vision was that the first thing that we plead to the Department of Fisheries, that we must form a co-management. And I mean, when I talk about the co-management, I talk about the gathering of a family. And that family must become out of the state, and it must become out of the communities. And that vision was to form the stakeholders together, and that must be DFFE, who are the ones who involved in our permits. It must be local government. Each of every fisherman, of there must be a representative of a fisher in each and every town around the coastline to represent the fishing communities in the town. There must be a provincial government also, so that they can put the things together, so that local government cannot struggle to help us as communities. Then last thing, the regulations, DFFE. We must be part of those regulations, so that people cannot decide on your life, what your needs are. They didn't live with you in the same place as you are. So how can people sit there in Cape Town, but they taking decisions on behalf of the communities on ground? And then what I'm going to say is CEDA. For all that fabrics that are standing around in the coastline that are destroying now in the moment, CEDA must come. He got the funding. He must come and assist us to rebuild that infrastructures. Then Spoornet is part of the harvest. He's the one who is responsible for all these small harvests around the coastline. He must come and assist us with this. And then the last thing is public work. He's the owner of all the infrastructures around the coastline. So if we can come around and sit around the table, I think it was not necessary for us today to sit around here and fight for our future generation. It can be concluded long before it comes to this. So the fault that the department was making, they wasn't recognize us as communities. That's why they exclude us with all the decisions they was making on behalf of the people. Then last, I want to say, I see the budget speech in South Africa. Nowhere they mention about the small-scale fisheries. Yeah, small-scale farmers. But nowhere they mention about the small-scale fisheries. So there's no budget for us as communities to make a sustainable and a better life for our children. So we are not part of the Constitution of South Africa if it comes to this by recognition. Then last thing I want to say is this lionfish, TAC, they was cutting of dunning the department without the people, the custodians of the land. The land belonged to us. So yeah, they were sharing to the commercials, they were sharing to FREP, they were sharing to the recreational. That is rich people living in other kind of world, not like us that are suffering. So there was, like my understanding, there was 52% giving for that rich people out of the lionfish sector, and 48% was giving for us. The custodians must suffer, the riches must go forward. I raise my case.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Llewellyn Adams. I'm not part of the small fisher community. I'm part of a land rights organization called Mavubuya and TCOE. I've yesterday heard one of the, and I see the lady's not here now, she mentioned, the first thing that she mentioned, she said that culture is very important. And I do understand in some of our communities, culture is important. But culture takes away individualism. And in the fishing industry, individualism is very important. So when it comes to culturalism, the chiefs and those people will make decisions for the people on the ground. And that's where it comes to deciding on the basketing and what is going to be in the basket. So when we listen to the jury, and my question here is now, what is the role of the jury? Because if some of the jury members are now saying culture is important, which will then say will take away the individual right of this person, what is the role of the jury for him? What will the role of the jury be to protect him, his individual right as an individual, his wife's individual right, his children's individual right, because culture is more important than individual right here then for the jury. Whereas individual rights for the fisherman is very important. The other thing for me is that, yes, the fishing community also needs to work hand in hand with the land rights organizations. As I've heard yesterday in Port Nolloth, the mining sector, once there's a mine on the coastline, there's a certain boundaries where fishermen can't go, even though the fish is there. They can't go there. So the decisions that are being made with the big mining companies, the fisher community needs to be part of those decisions which are made there. Otherwise, they will be prohibited to go where the fish are, where their livelihood are. The other thing that I just need to, because the question was asked, is it viable, the fishing industry? Tourism came after the fishing communities which were established years and years ago. But tourism now gets a preference over the fishing communities. And that's where the fishing communities and the rights of the fishing communities are being suppressed because tourism are being put above the fishing communities. And when decisions are made, land and the fishing communities need to sit down to make and be part of those decisions so that everybody can be included in that. That's my last thing that I need to say.
Thanks, comrade. We will get to exactly those issues as part of today, and when it comes to mining, we will dive into that tomorrow. I do think, though, it's important to emphasize that fighting for cultures, fighting for collective rights has been in the DNA of the fisher struggles here in South Africa, and that goes together with individual rights to food, individual rights to housing, individual rights to healthcare. But thanks for that. Clarence.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Clarence Oliphant. I'm all the way from the Northern Cape, Van der Kloef. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the jury. And based on the questions that you posed yesterday, by listening to the testimonies, it really came down to a strategic thinking as fishers, where Mr. Johnny was asking the question of what is the key right you want to get recognized. That in itself, it does acquire for us as fishermen to sit down. It's easy always to complain about things, but it's also constructive if you, along complaining, you have a solution to what you want to achieve. And I also like what one of the members were saying about the access to remedy. How does our access to remedy looks like as a fisher movement? So the reflection I had yesterday was really, it filtered down to us as fishers, as much as we can speak to our challenges as the socio-economic issues that we are faced with. But there are also some critical questions we need to ask ourselves. What rights do we want to see as key and to be recognized? And the last one, it comes down to what my lenient friend was just speaking about, the sustainability of the resource. And often we forget that these people have indigenous knowledge. And if it was that these people have overfished, how is it possible that a local fisherman knows this time of the year the fish migrate to this area? We shouldn't fish the fish. There is this knowledge. And this knowledge needs to be part and parcel when there's conversations around the room. Lastly, I have a question to the jury. So far, listening to the testimonies, in your opinion, how do you see what human rights is being violated so far by listening to the testimonies that was presented here yesterday? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Clarence. Let's see if there is a few more hands. Okay, I see Jeremiah, and then Zingisa. And I see more on the... Okay, Jeremiah, please.
Good morning, everybody. I don't want us as fishers to keep on beating around the bush. We must be very specific in terms of what we want. I think we must task the government to go and do a thorough research in order to establish who are the indigenous people of this land. Because if the land belongs to all the rich people and to government, then it means we will fight until we die. But if we can get our land back, then it means that we as fishers can also make decisions. Because now, even if you go into co-management, if the land belongs to government, government is so foolish and disrespectful towards the citizens of South Africa. Because what they are doing nowadays is that they are outsourcing their services to agencies, which means they are distancing themselves from the community. Now, if we want to engage with government, we must first fight with the AGN, with the agencies, which is something that is just making the fishers very tired, aggressive, and at the end of the day, we will become intolerant and retaliate against whoever is standing in our way. Thank you.
Thanks. Zingisa. It's on, it's on.
What I would like the jury to help us with is to make sure that this co-management committee is in place, because we know what we want as fishers. If there can be this co-management committee, every stakeholder can know what their responsibility is. Just like Public Works, who is the one who is in charge of the infrastructure for the fishers. And if there can be those cooperatives and the secondary cooperatives, we can sell our catch. We can make money. We cannot depend on anyone. We can live with what we have. God have blessed us by letting us stay in the coast. And also, we don't just harvest everything. We don't catch something small size. We know how to fish because we are keeping our resources for generations to come. But the trawlers are taking everything out, but no one is stopping them from what they are doing. Yet we are the indigenous people who are responsible, who are doing this responsible. But we are the people who are denied access to the ocean. And we say, if only they can consult us, or else they can decide. They cannot make this decision for us. We know what we want as fishers. Thank you.
Thank you, Zingisa. Andre, I see your hand. And then I'm checking if there is any other hands.
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing. That is, we must never forget what was the purpose, what are the intentions with this policy. The intention was clearly, we want to have access. We want to be part of the system. We want to be part of the sector, the fishing sector. We want to be given the opportunity to exercise that right to earn a living, a decent living, and to support our families. And then they denied us currently that. I mean, this policy was promulgated 2012, and we now 12 years later, and we still sit in the same position. So, please, yes, and give us that opportunity, if you are here, Mr. Government. Let us not, as Jeremy said, beat around the bush. We were very clear in our request to saying that let us live our life as fishers, please. And that was the whole intention. And these regulations and rules that you put in place that restrain us from doing so. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Yes, sorry, I don't remember your name, so please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Ishmael Kingman. I'm the chairperson of LH Black Marlin Cooperative. That is a neighbor cooperative from Kalk Bay. So from my side, I've just found out about this event on social media. And I made my way here to find out what's going on. And I know what Masibundisi stand for, trying to help the communities. But something that is from my side, which I see in this wall, I don't see no of our community cooperative members in this wall. And what I'm hearing is complaints of communities not having access. But for me, it's very strange that our communities is not involved. The fact that you guys are having this event in Kalk Bay, we have Lavendale Cooperative, we have Ocean View Cooperative, we have Kalk Bay Cooperative, we have Capricorn Cooperative, we have Steamboat Cooperative, and for me, I hear the cry of the communities, but from my side, I think this is exactly where the problem starts. Masibundisi is coming to this side of the community, but he is not hearing the cry of our communities. And from our cooperatives, what I'm hearing here is that everything looks doom and gloom from the cooperative side, from fishing side. So from my side, I just wanted to make something clear from Lavendale Cooperative, LH Black Marlin Cooperative, is that we understand what we have in our basket. And we understand how to make certain species beneficial for our communities. And what affects me the most is that all these NGOs is fighting on government or fighting against government, making this policy sound like it's lacking a whole lot of things. Where I see where NGOs can be more productive by educating cooperatives to understand how to get maximum value out of the basket that you guys have, is of adding value to your species. We have multiple species in our baskets, but the media sounds like the basket is empty. That automatically put our fishes on a negative path. Everyone is complaining, protesting, but everyone forget that what we had is what we had for years. The problem is, how do we get that maximum value out of that species? And the policy is clear, try to own the whole value chain. We never once owned any of our species. I've been a fisher from 13 years old. I've been catching lionfish from 13 years old. Not once have I owned that full value chain from harvesting the snook to selling the snook. So, from my side, I don't see the policy or the basket as empty. I see it as all full. Right? And from our communities, there is definitely ways for us to reach where the big companies is if we come together. Not making this whole policy sound like it's all a nightmare for our cooperatives, because it's not. We are now in a process where we are waiting for the appeals, which may add more species to our baskets. But we as neighboring communities has decided that we are coming together and we're going to make this policy work for us.
Thanks,
So,
Misha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Misha. Thank you for raising these points. I think that actually what you are saying raises, first of all, I do recognize we are here. Indeed, we are in this hall, specifically in Kalk Bay, because this is where 21 years ago, rural fishing communities first came together to demand the recognition that indeed has allowed us to get to the point where we do have ownership over the rights, we have ownership over the value chain. I think that indeed this is a gathering of especially rural fishing communities. And what you're saying as part of a cooperative based in the metro actually really points the issue, the strong divide that we are seeing between what is happening for cooperatives that are set in the metro, that are set in a context where infrastructure exists. Just now we heard the comments about infrastructures, about not having jetties, about not having access to even the very basic things that you will need, as you have in the beautiful harbor here in Kalk Bay. And this is exactly the divide that we see when it comes to access, when it comes to rights, when it comes to the ability to make these rights that we have on paper become a reality on the ground. So it's good that you're here. Please do listen to the challenges that rural fishing communities across the entire country, not just in the Western Cape, face, because while it's very straightforward, from Kalk Bay to go to the office in Foreshore, to get a permit sorted, to get everything that you need in your basket, to even compile the permits requisitions, it's a very different reality where you're in a rural community where there is no network, no access to internet, where many people don't speak English, where all these things are missing, and yet we must make it work without support. So this is why Masifundise and Costa Links, because this is not a Masifundise only process, this is a Costa Links, a grassroots organization that represents 4 provinces of small-scale fishers, have demanded this tribunal to look at. And so while we appreciate that perspective also coming from the urban context, I think that what we're going to be focusing on is the specific plight that rural fishing communities are facing. So this is what a lot of the discussion has been about. It's not about saying nothing is working, but it's about recognizing that out of the 200 cooperatives that have been formed as part of the small-scale fishery policy, I would say about 70% and more are not even managing to submit their fishing rights applications because of the infrastructural challenges that they face. In the West, in KZN and Eastern Cape, for provinces that are so vast, there is maybe 3 departmental officials available. And oftentimes they are not able to reach the very rural areas where you need to drive 4 kilometers away from the N2 to be able to actually even be in that village. So yes, I think this is the kind of challenges that we are seeing, and we hope that the urban fishing cooperatives are going to join us in calling for the department to put effort, to put investment, to put support out also for rural fishing communities as well, so that we don't leave anyone behind. Zingisa, please go ahead.
I forgot to speak about the customary right. The customary right, if only those judgments of Gongose can be true, because they said by that judgment we can go to the sea, we can have access to the sea, and as fishers we can go there to practice our traditional fishing right. But that is not happening. And what is happening now in our areas, there are MPAs all over, which says to us, you can maybe walk 20 kilometers to go fishing. You can walk on foot to get to the space where you can fish. But what is happening? The people or the investors are allowed to fish in the MPA. Whereas I stay, there is an investor who has just built a hotel, who is fishing in the MPA just before us, even now, the boat is moving around in the MPA. The ECPTA is doing nothing to that investor now. This is something which is happening just before us. Yet they say we are not supposed to fish here. This is an MPA. Things like that. I want the jury also to look at such things which are happening just in front of us. Yet the customary right allows us to practice our traditional right. Thank you.
Thanks, Zingisa. And I think that, the point you're talking about customary rights, we will get to that this afternoon. Because just to sort of see the program for today, we're going to go into the case of inland fisheries in Garib this morning. And then we're going to look at the Isimangaliso case. And then this afternoon after lunch, we will look at the Dwesakwebe case and indeed the lack of recognition of customary rights. Before we start with the new case, the next case, I do want to see if the jury, some questions were posed to the jury. I want to see if there is any responses or points that you would like to raise at this point or, later on.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I just had a sort of a historical question. What were the rights that all of you, the fisher folk, had during the apartheid era?
Andre, maybe you want to take a stab at that, or if then also Andy could speak to that, quite informed.
We didn't have any rights under the apartheid system. Of me as a colored people, of a colored man, Khoisan, you want to call it me these days. I didn't. You were supposed to work for those who have the rights, who are the white people of this land.
Anyone wants to elaborate more on that? I don't know if one of our experts also wants to say something on that. Jackie, would you? Let's get a microphone to Jackie.
Thank you for a very important question. And as Andre has answered, here in the Western Cape, many of the small-scale fishers were forced to work for the white-owned companies. In the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal on the eastern seaboard, subsistence fishing wasn't even recognized. So those fishers had to go under the radar or they were criminalized. In some parts, government turned a blind eye, and then in other places, particularly where there were marine protected areas declared, they were harshly regulated, often harassed and criminalized. So it did vary. So Western Cape and the Northern Cape, where Walter and Morgan come from, tend to be quite similar. The large commercial, white-owned commercial industry would employ them, and they would often be given small boats called bakkies, 2-meter little wooden rowing boats, and they worked for the big companies, handed over their catch. Also Paternoster, where Kim comes from. So the West Coast fishers had access. They were allowed to take home a little, what was called a fry, a little bit of fish. But the fishers will tell you this. They will respond, I'm sure, more. But I just want to say it did vary along the coastline. And some communities, such as Kalk Bay, the gentleman who spoke earlier would be able to attest to this in Cape Town. The apartheid regime treated fishers differently depending on their racial categorization. And Andy can also attest to this. In this area here around Kalk Bay, they later on, shortly before democracy, they were in fact even given quotas. The colored fishers in this area were given preferential treatment over black African fishers. They actually got quotas. So it was very uneven. Thank you.
Angie, do you want to add more?
I'm listening to the questions coming out here, and I want to jump up and answer. People are asking, what's the vision? What is a better life? Getting money? And then the gentleman speaks about getting high value for fish. Food security is important to our communities. The price of snoek now is 120 Rand the other day. We used to sell to the community for 10 Rand, and we made a living. Now, I don't talk about myself, but I'm going to talk now. I was a street kid for a year. I lived in a gutter. Our family broke up. The fishermen in Oudekraal took me in. Fishing at that time was not a job that was recognized as you were a carpenter or something. You were a person from the gutter. That's how we were treated. It's only when I learned to dive. The history of the fishing is never told in South Africa. We had open access in the beginning until the government realized that there was money in lobster and there was money in trawling. And then they marginalized us. Then the Colored Affairs came and they gave to the supposed colored people the rights to fish. The African people were not allowed to fish. They had to stay in Transkei. If they wanted to come down here, they did job reservation. So what the questions coming out of here is a good one. That's individual rights versus community rights. Now, I've traveled the world. I've been to 35 nations. There are 15 different systems. What system fills up? When we sat on that policy, myself and them, we went for community rights, but the government never knew how to implement it. Why? They didn't want to, because they were themselves involved. Your fight is not against the big companies. It's against the greedy people that have put themselves in a position to get rights, and they're not fishermen. They've never fished in their life. If you look at them, Robinson and all the big companies that took the black empowerment, under black empowerment, they got the rights. Our fight is not against the big companies. Our fight is to get our rights from the government. They must understand what our rights are. Tourism, one chap brought in the tourism. Tourism is one of the offsets of fishing. If I go overseas, I go on a tour to go fish. In Cancun, I went fishing with a boat there. I had to pay. We must open our own tourism to take people fishing. It's not done here in South Africa where you take people fishing. Lots of people want to go fishing from overseas to catch our fish. The other thing is the history is never properly told of what it is. We're working from Masipundisi now, but before that, there was a fight. 20 of us did not go with the Colored Affairs Department, the people of Houston and our group in Cape Town. We became poachers. And if you were caught, you were fined, not sent to jail at that time. But they took the rights and we didn't go with it. So we disobeyed the law until the ANC came into power, and me being a member at that time, I thought, yeah, I would get my rights now. And we were all here was in the struggle, the 20 of us, but none of us got it because we were marginalized. You are fighting people here that are greedy, that are looking at capitalism to get themselves. They're opening up companies, the Fred Robinsons and all of them. That is your fight here. You have to get the rights there and you have to understand them. And I've fought for these rights against the government. They've marginalized me. I'm no more a member. I'm out. So how do we fight? Who do we fight? How are you going to get your rights? That is the big question. The court cases, we went to court. Oh, we won the case. I signed the document there. Everything's fine. Didn't get anything. We're still where we are today. How do we hold them accountable? How do we get them to change their mindsets? We have to change the way the policy is set in. What do you want? That is what you must answer. How must the policy fit into you? You need a small-scale policy that addresses the community. Plus, you can't make money from fishing. You can make you can subsist yourself, but you'll never be able to make a living. So what alternatives do you want? You want tourism. I see people there in Brazil taking the seashells, making seashells. I see people making food from mussels and selling it in jars. There's all alternative things to do. So you have to think, how are you going to change it? How are you going to win this fight with the government? Go to court. They will delay you. I can tell you now. They will delay you and they will still not take the rights from it. The people who got the rights are not fishermen. How are you going to get it back from them? They must be chucked out. And then there will be enough for you. Oh, we haven't got enough sustainability of the resource. There's no resource to catch. That will be what they'll hold against you. What rights will you got? You will get a pittance, and they will get the riches. That is your fight.
Thanks, Andy. You can keep that there. Thank you. Ben, you had your hand up, and then...
Just a comment. Several people here were talking about not just the fishing, but the land. They were saying we must get our land back. And they're talking to a demand which most South Africans feel has not been met. 30 years of democracy, something like 8% of former white-owned land has been transferred through land redistribution. 8% in 30 years. It seems to me that the problems facing small-scale fishers are just one manifestation of a much wider problem, which is the marginalization of the majority of people in our country. And the plight of small-scale fishers reminds me very much of the plight of small-scale farmers, who are basically ignored by government. There are some people who are benefiting from land redistribution. They're the business class. There are some people who are saying, no, but what's the problem? We are getting benefits. And that reminds me a little bit of what the previous speaker was saying. There are some cooperatives which it's working for them, but they are in the minority. And one possibility is that you have to form an alliance with those people, win them back, make them part of your struggle, even though it's difficult. In the farming sector, agricultural sector, large-scale white commercial farming is seen as the only option. Small-scale farming, like small-scale fisheries, is seen as a relic from the past, rather than a part of the future. What dominates government policy thinking is neoliberalism. In other words, you must support big business. That is the way to create jobs. Actually, South Africa has one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, as some of the highest inequality in the world. So the neoliberal model is not actually working for our people. And that's why there's so much anger, not only here with small-scale fishers, in rural communities, amongst workers, amongst small-scale traders, those who work in the informal sector. Basically, people are being disregarded. So there's a much wider challenge here. So I think one of the questions that should be discussed here is how do you get together with all the other people who are being disadvantaged by these policies to stand together, to fight for a different model altogether. I think on your own, small-scale fishers by themselves are not going to get far enough. You have to join hands with others, form wider alliances. And I know, Chairperson, that this is not the major focus of the tribunal, which is how to get out of here. I understand that. But perhaps there's some scope for discussion of alternative strategies, since we are back in this hall 21 years later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And indeed, on this last point, I do want to acknowledge our comrades from CASAL that are here in the room, and also from Rural Women Assembly, as well as the South African Food Sovereignty Campaign, to mention a few, together also with some of our comrades from the climate justice and environmental justice sector. Indeed, actually, that is very much part of what we are hoping to achieve. And that's also where, we invite the comrades to come and hear today in the hearings of this week, so that then when we do get to the conference in October, part of what needs to be on the agenda is how do we strategize together as different sectors, because we do face the same issues. We do face land grabbing and ocean grabbing at the same time. And so I think also what I hear from the floor is ask for the jury, and maybe this is something that can find its way in the verdict, is helping us thinking about new strategies. Because as Andy pointed out, we have tried them, maybe not all, but we tried so many different things. We went to court, we tried to do policy, we did all these different things, and yet we are finding ourselves still here. So I think that's also where thinking from your expertise, from your engagements in other contexts as well, is how do we build on that knowledge as well to take our struggle forward. We are running with time. Time is going very fast because we are having such good discussions. But I think if that's, I don't know if, Gianni, were you also wanting to make a point? Or are you covered for now? If not, it's fine. We can move to the second case that will be presented in front of the tribunal today.